What happens when a single piece of information lands in the wrong hands, or the right ones? On May 5th, in General Hospital, Ethan steps into dangerous territory as he delivers critical intel directly to Sonny. But this isn't just casual information sharing. This is the kind of revelation that could shift power in Port Charles overnight. And at the center of it all? Rick. Because once Sonny hears what Ethan knows, there may be no stopping what comes next. General Hospital Daily Spoilers. Ethan brings Sonny intel. Does he expose Rick on May 5? In Port Charles, information is never just information. It's leverage, it's danger, it's currency, and sometimes it's a weapon powerful enough to change the entire balance of power. On May 5th, Ethan finds himself holding exactly that kind of weapon. And instead of keeping it, he walks straight into Sonny's orbit and hands it over. But the real question isn't what Ethan knows. It's what Sonny will do with it. And more importantly, whether Rick is about to become collateral damage in a much larger game. Ethan's role, the unexpected messenger. Ethan has never been a simple character in Port Charles. He operates in the gray areas, sometimes observer, sometimes participant, occasionally messenger of information that carries unintended consequences. On May 5th, he steps fully into that role. But this time, the stakes are higher. Because what he brings to Sonny isn't rumor, it isn't speculation. It's intel, structured, meaningful, and potentially explosive. And in Port Charles, intel like that doesn't stay neutral for long. Sonny Corinthos, a man who doesn't ignore information. To understand the weight of this moment, you have to understand Sonny. Sonny Corinthos is not someone who receives information passively. He evaluates it, he tests it, and if it holds value, he acts on it. So when Ethan delivers intel, Sonny doesn't just listen, he calculates. Because in Sonny's world, every piece of information has consequences. For enemies, for allies, for power structures. And Rick sits dangerously close to the center of all three. Rick's position, already on unstable ground. Rick is no stranger to conflict in Port Charles. Rick Lansing has always existed in a space defined by ambition, strategy, and complicated relationships. But what makes this moment different is vulnerability. Rick is not operating in a vacuum. He is surrounded by past decisions, hidden alliances, and unresolved tensions, which means any new piece of information could destabilize his position, and Ethan's intel might be exactly that catalyst. The intel. What does Ethan actually know? The episode deliberately keeps the exact nature of Ethan's information ambiguous, but ambiguity is part of the tension. Because in storytelling like this, the impact of information often matters more than the specifics. What we do know is this. It is relevant to Sonny. It involves Rick. And it has the potential to change relationships or power dynamics. That alone is enough to trigger suspicion. And suspicion in Port Charles is never harmless. The delivery. A quiet explosion. Ethan doesn't arrive with chaos. He arrives with intent. The delivery of information is calm, controlled, but underneath it lies volatility, because both men understand what's happening in that moment. This is not casual conversation. This is escalation. Even without raised voices or dramatic confrontation, the tension is thick enough to shift the atmosphere. And once Sonny hears it, everything changes. Sonny's calculations begin immediately. The moment Sonny processes Ethan's intel, the gears start turning, not emotionally, strategically. He doesn't rush. He doesn't react impulsively. Instead, he begins to evaluate. Is this credible? Who benefits from this information? What risks are involved in acting on it? Because Sonny understands something fundamental about Port Charles. Information is never isolated. It always connects to something larger. Rick in the crosshairs. Even before any direct confrontation, Rick becomes the focal point of consequence. Because whether or not he is guilty of anything being implied, perception alone is enough to create danger. In Port Charles, suspicion can be just as damaging as truth. And once Sonny starts connecting dots, Rick's position becomes increasingly precarious. Not because action has been taken yet, but because possibility has entered the equation. Ethan's motivation: help or harm. One of the most intriguing elements of this storyline is Ethan's motivation. Why bring this to Sonny? Is it a sense of obligation? A calculated move? Or something more personal? The ambiguity surrounding Ethan's intent adds another layer of tension, because depending on perspective, Ethan can be seen as a whistleblower, a messenger, or a catalyst for conflict. And in Port Charles, those roles often overlap dangerously. The ripple effect begins early. Even before Sonny acts, the ripple effect begins. Because information once spoken cannot be unspoken. It spreads. Through interpretation, through assumption, through reaction. And each layer adds distortion, which means by the time it reaches Rick, if it reaches him directly, it may already be reshaped into something more dangerous than its origin. Rick's unseen pressure. Rick may not immediately know what is coming, but tension in Port Charles rarely remains invisible for long. There are subtle signs. Shifts in behavior from others, unexpected scrutiny, changes in tone during interactions. These signals create pressure without clarity, and pressure without clarity is one of the most destabilizing forces in storytelling. Sonny's next move, the real threat. The true danger in this storyline is not Ethan's intel, it is Sonny's response. Because once Sonny decides to act, the consequences are rarely limited. Possible outcomes include direct confrontation, strategic manipulation, quiet investigation, or calculated exposure. Each option carries different levels of fallout, and Rick may not see any of them coming. Trust as a weapon. One of the central themes of this arc is trust. Who trusts whom, and who uses trust as leverage? Ethan's decision to approach Sonny suggests a break in conventional trust boundaries. And Sonny's willingness to listen suggests he recognizes the value of that breach. But trust, once weaponized, becomes unpredictable, because it can shift at any moment. The moral gray zone. This storyline doesn't offer clear heroes or villains. Instead, it operates in moral gray areas. Is Ethan helping or interfering? Is Sonny protecting or investigating? Is Rick guilty or misunderstood? The lack of clarity is intentional. Because in Port Charles, clarity often arrives too late. The tension of waiting. Perhaps the most powerful element of this storyline is anticipation. The audience knows something is coming, the characters sense instability, but nothing has fully detonated yet. That waiting period is where tension thrives, because it forces every interaction to feel temporary, like something is about to break at any moment. Why this storyline works. This arc succeeds because it is built on information-driven tension, character-based interpretation, strategic ambiguity, emotional undercurrents. It is not about immediate payoff, it is about escalation, and escalation is what keeps audiences engaged. Final thoughts. Ethan bringing intel to Sonny on May 5th in General Hospital is more than a plot development. It is a trigger point, a moment where information becomes instability, and instability becomes consequence. Rick stands at the edge of that consequence, whether he knows it or not. Because in Port Charles, the truth is never just what is said, it is what happens after it is heard.